Welcome, everyone. I cannot tell you how thrilled I am to have these two guests today. Welcome, Mary Frances and Mareisha.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Michael. Thank you for having us.
Of course. Now, let me tell you all a little bit about them quickly before we dive in. Mary Frances Winters is the founder and CEO of the Winters Group, global consulting firm specializing in workplace culture and organizational change. So, exactly the kinds of things we talk about on this podcast. She's been named a pioneer and trailblazer. She's been a leading voice in diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice for over 4 decades. Known for her thought provoking insights, she's an internationally recognized speaker, consultant, and best selling author whose work inspires bold dialogue and advances equity centered transformation. And we have Mary Frances's daughter with us. This is the first mother daughter duo on the show. Mareisha N. Winters Reese is president and COO of the Winters Group, a former engineer turned organizational strategist. She brings a systems thinking lens to workplace culture and leadership development. Known for her advocacy for equity and justice, she helps organizations build more human centered and equitable workplaces. So, welcome to you both again.
Thank you.
So happy to have you here to talk about such important issues. I'm sure we'll talk about lots of things. I thought it would be great to start out with your book, Black Fatigue. I know you're both working on the second edition, and we should talk about that in a minute. But first, I want to just help people understand what you mean by Black Fatigue. The book is absolutely incredible. Like, if you want to talk about a book that really takes an issue and gets you to understand it from such an emotional, personal level, as well as a data driven level, like there couldn't possibly be a better book for this. So, Mary Frances, could you just help us understand what you mean by Black fatigue? Because, and we'll get into this later too, there's some confusion about that right now.
Well, I don't know about confusion. There's a
Okay, good point.
co-opting, right?
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
so Black Fatigue, the book Black Fatigue: How Racism Erodes the Mind, Body, and Spirit was conceived in 2019 and first published in 2020. And it was really listening to a lot of our clients. We were doing a lot of focus groups and a lot of listening sessions in 2020. And I kept hearing from Black employees, Black people, particularly younger ones, millennials and Gen Zs, we're tired, we're exhausted. And I would tease and I'd say, you're 25 years old. I can be exhausted. You can't be exhausted yet. And but they would look at me with that side eye, like, okay, lady, I'm going to respect you, but I know that I'm fatigued. So I thought,
Mhm.
what is this? And, Black fatigue is really the intergenerational malaise that Black people have that impacts us both psychologically and physiologically. And that's been proven. And we talk about that in the book from living daily in a society that is the foundation is actually racism. And so it impacts our daily walk and how we show up. We talk about things like code switching and all of those kinds of things. It's difficult to be authentic. So Black fatigue is the burden of living in a racist society.
Yeah, thank you for that, and it's so important how you point out it's not just like, "Oh, I'm tired," as if, it's the same as other people being
Right,
tired,
right.
right? The psychological, the physical costs, the intergenerational that's been going on is so key, and it's such I know we'll get into present moment, but I just want people to recognize how impactful this still is today. Like, literally just 3 days ago, a really good friend of mine, probably one my wife and her are probably the most positive people I have ever known, and she called me the other day and just said, "I just can't do it today, like, I'm exhausted today." Normally, and this made me think of your book, she's like, "Normally, my relationship with God keeps me good, but today I'm feeling exhausted. Being a Black woman in this country, like, I just can't do it today," and it's every day and every moment. And so that That's so important for people to understand too, and I think there's so much confusion about that, and misunderstanding, and maybe a lack of even trying to understand. So we'll get into all that soon. But, Marisha, what's happening with the 2nd edition? Like, what's changed? How are you updating? How have you been thinking about this lately?
Yeah, so Michael, we literally just submitted the final manuscript like 2 days ago,
Congratulations.
and so
Amazing.
it's been as you were sharing too about how, there's so much information and there's so much data that we had to update, and so just since 2020 to 2025, there's been so much that has impacted Black people, and we've had to change dates, or not change dates, but update data.
Right.
And so we've added 4 new chapters to the book. There's a
Wow.
chapter on how AI impacts Black fatigue, right? So AI is very
Mm.
huge right now, and but AI is
Mhm.
not always good. It could be helpful, but we have to also think about how it impacts people, especially those that are historically marginalized. We have a chapter on global Black fatigue. So the first edition was very
Uh,
US centric, right? And so we
yeah.
wanted to incorporate and recognize that racism is not just a US thing, a phenomenon.
Mhm.
It's global. And so we added
Yeah.
global, and Mary Frances has been spending a lot of her time now in Barbados. So she was able to bring a lot of the stories from people that she's made friends with there, who have also lived in other countries, and being
Yeah.
able to add that. We did a survey prior to this edition to kind of just see, like, how are people experiencing Black fatigue, to what extent, how is it impacting their physical, their mental, and all of that. And then they also submitted personal stories, so we added a chapter just of real stories from their own words on how Black fatigue impacts them. So even like you just shared about your friend and feeling exhausted, like those types of stories, right? It's just like we try to put on this facade and just push through, but that continues to just, as the subtitle of the book says, erode our mind, body, and spirit, right? And so, and then I said 4 new chapters. Mary Frances, what am I missing? Did I list the fours?
I was thinking about that
Oh,
too.
I know. It's
Mhm.
Marisha's Black Fatigues.
Oh,
You know,
right.
I was like, what is this thing? So in the first edition, it had Mary Frances had the chapter on her personal story of Black fatigue. So
Yeah.
I added a chapter on my Black fatigue, and so it just kind of speaks to as well just the different in generation. So even though my mom, Mary Frances, created an environment or tried to create an environment, right, to protect me and my brothers. She had gone through, was born and raised in throughout the civil rights era. So she had experienced many things, and knowing that, okay, when I have a family, I don't want it to be the same. And so
Mhm.
even with that, though, you cannot protect fully against racism that's going to be experienced. So I shared just some of mine, highlighting that, yes, I had some privilege growing up that my mother did not have, but it still didn't 100% protect me from Black fatigue as well. And so we added that. So we had to update, as I said, statistics. There's a lot of things just about how especially the current administration, the different policies that have been put down, the executive orders, how that has impacted. In the first edition, there's a chapter, Then is Now, which is also still in this second edition, but it's like, then is still now, it's just, you were not improving the statistics, right? And so even that, so it was hard in a sense for both of us to update the book, because it's like, we feel the fatigue of just, there's just so
Right.
much, right? It would have been great to write a book that says, "Oh, look at how all these things turned around." But,
Mhm.
and so yeah, so that's the second edition, and like I said, we just literally submitted the final manuscript this week to our publisher, and I'm just forever grateful to be able to work on this with Mary Frances, who I will share. I don't know if she wants to, but she did not really want to do the second edition either. Um, and, because she was tired. She's like, "I'm tired. I don't want to." And I said, she said if I joined her and helped, then she would do it. So thank you, Mary Frances, for
Mhm.
doing it, because I think it's just much needed, and not only to affirm Black people and their experience and to say, "Okay, I'm not, you know, crazy. I'm not like this is real." But also for allies or aspiring allies to take a look and understand our lived experience and then to think about, "Okay, how can I help? What can I do to
Mhm,
dismantle the system?" So
mhm.
that was a
I
lot.
wanna
That is the second
I
edition.
I wanna mention that it will come out in June of 2026 so
Yes.
that your listeners will know when it will come out. I wanna also mention one other
Perfect.
thing that has changed that was really profound for me. There was a chapter in the first book, called, Sublime Ignorance, because in 2020, after the George Floyd murder, many corporate leaders were sort of saying, "Oh, I didn't know that racism was still such a big issue. Okay, let's focus there." And they came out with all of these pronouncements and issued all of these
Mhm.
statements that they were going to
Yep.
focus on anti-black racism. And so that chapter really focused on, but they didn't know. So in that chapter in 2020, I wrote about, okay, so here's what to know. Here are definitions. Here are some experiences. Well, today I changed that chapter, and it's now called "From Sublime Ignorance to Deliberate Erasure," because people are no longer
Mhm,
saying that they're ignorant, that they didn't know.
mhm.
They're basically saying, "Well, we don't wanna know, and so we're gonna ban books, and we're going to dismantle, DEI initiatives. We're not going to allow people to focus on racism," like the Fearless Fund, which was a fund dedicated, for Black women that was taken to court, and now they've, changed their focus. So it went from, "Oh, we don't know, and now that we know, we're gonna work on it," to, "Oh, yeah, well, we know, but we're just gonna deny it. We're gonna, not only deny it, but we're gonna weaponize it and demonize it and make it, a horrible bad thing." So
Yeah, yeah, gosh, thank you for sharing that context. I have really literally a million follow-up questions. And thank you for sharing that it's coming out in June. I'm gonna recommend that everyone get it in June, but I'm also gonna recommend you go out and get the first edition right now if you haven't read it. Like, don't wait till June. It's that important to understand. Um, so first, maybe just let's start with the current context. I mean, obviously, there's so much going on in that erasure that you're talking about. How do you both feel like you're seeing this issue, Black fatigue, but also racism and Blackness in general and US society in general? Like, just what are some of your feelings going through this current moment and what are you seeing?
for me, going through this current moment is to protect my peace. So I've been in Barbados for the last 4.5 months, and I extended my stay a little bit. I will be coming back to the States, but I'm coming back to Charlotte. Why do I want to come back to Charlotte? Because the target on immigrants, it's racial profiling. And so if the color of your skin looks like you could be, and we all, Black people come in all different shades. Look at Marisha's shade, look at my shade. And so,
Mhm.
as a matter of fact, when she was born, I don't know if you know this, Marisha, the OBGYN said, "Oh, she looks Puerto Rican." That was the first thing she said when Marisha came out, right?
Oh
Uh,
boy.
I mean, it's if people are just being identified, and I, obviously I'm empathetic with our brown sisters and brothers, and those who are who are being attacked just viciously and and so right now I feel numb sometimes, Michael. I just
Mhm,
feel numb. I feel like m- inhumanity against people based on their ethnicity and their race. And it's just, I just wrote a blog post for our inclusion solution blog, and I'm calling for the religious leaders and the clergy to be more outspoken, because any religion that you might be, whether it be Christian or Muslim or Buddhist or Jewish, it says we do not treat other people this way. And it's just being allowed. And the way that Donald Trump talks about people, calling them names, low life, and
Low
pig,
IQ and
yesterday, what,
stupid.
piggy. I mean,
mhm.
that's bullying, and we teach our children. What is the next generation? If we allow, why are we allowing this?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, that's all I mean, that's a good question. Why are we allowing this?
Yeah, for me too, I mean, it's a range of emotions, the fear, the anger, um, at times trying to find spaces of joy or moments of joy when you can, because, even joy is an act of resistance. And so, I feel like people want you to feel fear. They want you to feel, upset and angry, but that doesn't help us advance the work and move things forward. So for me, just feeling, and it's shocking to, I've worked with Mary Frances with my mom for, I always do that,
14, 14, I
14
think
years.
it's
Thank you. It's
14
like,
years. Yeah, 14
Mm,
and
years.
even just seeing the cyclical of like, oh, people are so on board and then they pull back and then they're so on board. And for me, whether you believe in like DEI, when we boil it down, right, is it's just about humanity, as Mary Frances said. And so the making sure everyone feels like they're seen, like they belong, like, yes, your humanity matters. And we're not seeing that. And the not seeing people in power, people that have this, sphere of influence to really make some significant change, speak out and say something is really, it's hurtful because it's, it's
mhm.
kind of like it tells that story of like, you don't matter. You're black, black people don't matter. Brown people don't matter. Immigrants don't matter. And so like, I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina now, and even seeing videos from other cities when ICE came to those cities, it made me sad, it made me angry, but not having it so close to home, like, I didn't think I could get any more sad or anger, but, like, having it right in my own backyard, it's hard, and, yeah, so
And it's fatiguing. It's
it's
fatiguing.
fatiguing, it's that fatiguing, and I wanted to share, so during writing the book, like, after we finished the first draft, which was in maybe, like, a month or so ago, I had this worst pain, shoulder pain, back pain that just wouldn't go away, like, and it radiated to my chest. So I'm thinking, like, "Oh, I have a like, I'm like, "Am I about to have a heart attack? I
Right.
don't know." And eventually I figured out it was just, like, the tense, like, me sitting here writing, updating, and, like, when you're, 1, sitting for too long, you hit you get problems, but just to, like,
Yeah.
I could feel myself tensing, like, even updating the stories and the data, and that's the fatigue, right? So it's that physical manifestation of the fatigue, even just writing it, and so all of that, I don't even know if I answered the question or where
Yeah.
this was
No.
going, but it's just, it's been really hard, and
Yeah.
even to the real quickly back to the ICE and the racial profiling, because we talk about that too, and then is now, and if we don't learn from the bad parts of history, things are never going to change, right? And so, and that's also part of the problem, that they don't want us to learn from the bad parts of history. They're banning the books, they're taking things out of museums. Oh, don't talk about slavery in the museum.
Mhm.
Yes, it's an ugly story for the US, but it's part of this history and we need to talk about it. So it's just kind of like how the things, return, and the history repeats if we don't do something, and something systemic to make change. Like, not just like, it has to be the changing the system. So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I've seen some of the PragerU videos that they're showing to
Hmm.
kids
Yes,
about slavery. I mean, talk about erasure and gaslighting.
right.
Like, that's bonkers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes I've heard people, I think, try to put a positive spin on this moment as like the last gasp of like white supremacy before we can have a truly multicultural, multiracial society with more equity. I mean, Mary Frances, you've been doing this work for a long time. Does that resonate? Does that not resonate?
I don't know, Michael. I think I'm, jaded. I think I'm cynical, right now because after all that we've been through here in the United States and globally, that the chapter on global Black fatigue really opened my eyes, the transatlantic slave trade and how that impacted so many cultures. And, here in Barbados, there's just a deep, rich heritage around slavery. Just last week, I was at a conference where the king of the Asante people in Ghana was here, and he was here for this conference and to be celebrated. But I learned that that people from Ghana were dropped in Barbados first. Yeah. They
Mm,
were
mm,
enslaved until in the 1830s, but some of the same stories. But this ingrained, deep, 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 rooted racism is global.
mhm.
It's
Oh, yeah.
global. So Black and brown people are the global majority. And I think the white supremacists as people know that, and they're trying as best as they can to ensure that there's not a flip of the power. Rather than looking to share power, right? They're looking to hold on to the power that they have. And even though they're in the minority, they have the power. Even here in the United States, white men only comprise what, 35% or 33%, of the population. I'm not saying that it's all white men, but
Yeah,
white
yeah,
those who are in power
yeah.
all over the world, right? And they're afraid this, the great replacement theory that came out, that was being purported a few years ago. And so I think that they will just do anything, and we are seeing that. And so I don't know. I don't know. I don't know I get here's what I think about the fall of the Roman Empire.
Mhm.
And we may just have to fall because I don't think that they're going to give up. I don't think that those who feel so threatened by the idea of a multicultural system and a multicultural society where we seek fairness, where we seek justice, I don't think. And we're seeing it all over the world. I mean, so it's not just Trump. It's not just Trump, Eastern Europe. I mean, we're seeing it we're seeing who's rising to power throughout the
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I don't talk about it that much, but my dissertation research was in Brazil, looking at the way people think about race and racism in this one area of Brazil in southern Bahia state. And it
world.
was so
I've been there.
fascinating a
Yeah.
time to do that because this was back in 2002 and 2003 when I lived there, and they were going through this transition of kind of going from people thinking like, oh, well, we're all mixed, we're all Brazilian, there's no racism here, to understanding, no, yeah, there actually is, and it's affecting Black and brown people here. Um,
Well,
and
that was Lula ran on a ticket of inclusion, back then, right? Yeah,
yeah,
I was
yeah.
traveling to Brazil around that time,
Oh,
2002,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh, when he won the
yeah,
first time in Bahia, it was a party.
right, yep.
I I lived there during Lula winning the first time and Brazil winning the World Cup in 2002, and I think they were different shirt colors, but equally huge parties. And I mean, that's the fascinating thing about Brazil too, right? They went through their Trump president, right, Bolsonaro, who used the same playbook, and now they reelected Lula and Bolsonaro's in jail. And yet, here we are.
Yes.
I mean, Marisha, how's your outlook? Is it like similar to Mary Frances? Is it different in terms of like you're a different generation? How does that impact how you think about what's going on now?
Yeah, I think that I don't know for me if it's really a generational difference. I think with the work that we do and being so ingrained in it and seeing how organizations either react to react to DI or pull back from DEI shows me where we are and shows me that until there's a shift of power, as Mary Frances, talked about, it would just like as long as as long as white men or white people are more in power, have more control, I don't see the shift. And I don't know how that happens. I don't, so but that's like to me And in this, you asked about our feelings earlier in the early question. One feeling too is just like helpless because in this administration that we're in now, knowing that each, branch of government seems to be like just falling in line, that makes me feel like I just am kind of like, I don't know. I don't know how we get to, to the change, even though I do believe that there's power, people have the power. And so the more that we speak up, the more that we're out there in the streets protesting, the more that we are sticking up for and supporting those that are marginalized. So even here in Charlotte, like just seeing the community support around with having ICE here, I think students in Charlotte walked out like the other day just in protest. And
Yeah.
so that type of thing gives me hope. But it's also, I think I'm impatient in some ways. I'm like, how long does it I don't know how long it takes to do the change and to dismantle it. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I do believe we can't deep down, I believe we can't be here forever. We're not gonna be in this space forever, but it's gonna take a long time. It's gonna take a lot of mindset, heart set changes, and then system changes. Like, we just can't continue like, that to me shows like, okay, we need to fix some of these rules or laws or different things. And so it does illuminate and highlight some of the cracks in our government and the system that we may not have known were there, and so that those types of things need to be fixed or corrected. And I do feel like it will change. It's just how long
Mhm.
will it take?
Yeah.
And there is some glimmer of hope. We've seen statistics. There was a poll that we just quoted in our book, that like 72% of the respondents of this poll, was over 1,000 people who were polled, said that they thought that companies should make commitments, to DEI. So I think we know that it's a minority of people who are anti, DEI,
Yeah.
anti fairness,
Yeah.
but they're the loudest and they have the most
The
power.
power, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Exactly.
and the money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, talk about like ignoring and gaslighting. I listened to the panel that Sherm had, the so-called Listening Across Differences panel with Van Jones and
Oh,
Robbie Starbuck, and I hope you didn't listen to it. It's so painful.
I did it.
Um, it, but like that's the thing. Obviously, Robbie Starbuck is ignoring everything that you're talking about in terms of inequities and bias and fatigue and all of it. And that would be one thing, but he's getting platformed by Sherm as having, like, a valid side to this issue, and that's really the horrific part of it, because that makes people think that this is okay, that maybe there's something to it, that I can have that opinion too, and that's really painful. Um, Speaking of Mary Frances, the co-opting of the term, can you tell us how are they co-opting? What are they trying to make it mean? And what was your initial reaction? Like, "Oh my my god, they're really trying to make it mean that?"
My initial reaction was, "What? I mean, what do you mean?" I mean, I just at first I was like, it was just incredulous to me. It was just like, What do you mean?" So this idea that white people have black fatigue because they're tired of black people misbehaving, black people doing, breaking the law or whatever they think, black people do in greater abundance than white people. And so it started this sort of, I don't know if it went really viral, but I mean, it was getting a lot of
They tried, yeah.
attention on social media. And of course, many black people were coming to our side, saying, you can't do that. You can't take that term. Here's the author. People you don't
Uh-huh,
even know, right? People were,
uh-huh,
they're kind of misquoting me too, but okay. But, it's like, she coined this term. And then some white people were saying, well, I don't care. She can't have it. She can't own this term. We can, I mean, and so I write about that in the book too. And I say, is that privilege? Is that, an act of white supremacy? I mean, I don't know that I would ever claim that if I knew somebody had coined a term and just said, well, I don't care, I'm gonna define it this way. And I mean, and that's been, that's with many of the terms, and we talk about that in the book with woke.
yeah,
with Black Lives
Yeah.
Matter. I mean, so there are so
Yeah.
many terms, and that's not new. Write about this in the
Even
book.
DEI, right? Because they
Yes,
I mean,
Well,
if
exactly.
you ask
DEI,
them,
yeah,
they really
DEI,
don't know what it means when you
Yep.
yeah.
the main one, right?
Yep.
DEI. And so,
Mhm.
but this is not new. I mean, it dates back to, when Frederick Douglass had a platform, that they would weaponize and demonize, him and the terms. They even
Mhm.
had a term for slaves who escaped. I can't pronounce it, but it was a mental disorder. If a, so
Mm.
I mean, throughout history, they've turned actions of around liberation and around freedom
Yeah.
and around fairness as negative and as things that we need to not support, and not even not support, but eliminate, in our society. And
Yeah.
it's so blatant today, Michael. It's so blatant. I was
Right?
just reading a report from Kimberly Crenshaw, who is credited with the term intersectionality from
Mhm.
back in the 80s. But she's just released a report that says anti-blackness is the point. That's the report, that this is the point of all of this. And she speaks to how so many Black women in particular have been vilified under
Mhm.
Trump, been
Right.
fired, from
Right.
from their roles, from the first Black woman, particular government roles, and how he went after Lisa Cook on the Federal Reserve Board, and so we're Black women. We see this. What happened with Kamala Harris? I mean, that glimmer of hope that, oh my gosh, could it be that we might have a Black and Southeast Asian woman as president of the United States? I mean, that just really, I mean, there was this moment where we were all feeling so much more hopeful and positive because we just knew
Mhm.
that a convicted felon who had done so much damage in his first term would not be elected again. We couldn't, we just knew that wasn't going to happen. I didn't sleep. I mean, I couldn't sleep for days. I stayed in bed for days after the election. It just, and the impact, as you mentioned earlier, the impact that it's had on our business. I mean, we had a staff of 20. Come the beginning of the year, we'll have a staff of 3.
Mm. Mm. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. I mean that and the gas, I mean, I interviewed Katika Roy, who was talking about Black women being just statistically the most educated
Yeah.
demographic in this country, and yet the insults that they throw, low IQ and all that other stuff, it's just so far from the reality, but people buy it because of, like you're saying, the anti-Blackness, and the bias. Uh, yeah. I had to get out of bed that morning after the election and do a talk at the SHRM Inclusion
No
Conference.
goodness.
I I completely rewrote the whole thing at, like, 9 in the morning.
Mm.
Um, we've been talking a lot about society in general, but you all work with organizations. How do you the patience you must have, like, to go and do this sort of educating people work when you're feeling such frustration and cynicism and fatigue? How do you do it? Like, how do you stay that patient to work with people?
Well, I mean, I feel that because this is like, it doesn't feel like work. Like, in some senses, it feels like work, but it's also like a
Mhm,
calling or a passion, and to
mhm,
know that what we're doing is bigger than ourselves, right? It's something that's like hopefully going to be a piece in that creating a better world, right? And so even though we only have a small piece of it or blip and, but if we can be in a session where at least one person gets that aha or it changes their mind or, that starts that trickle down effect or, and I think now it's been harder, of course, because we do go into situations where we experience a little more resistance than we may have, right? And so, or maybe the resistance was there, but it wasn't as outspoken. But I think
mhm,
that we have to remember, like we shared earlier, it's still a minor. Like there's still it's a minority of people who feel this way, even though they are tend to be the loudest. And so
Yeah.
we are trying to be and go in there and speak for those who may not be in the room and be able to share their story, share their experience. And it's hard, so I don't know. I guess we have patience, but I think it's just more so like we know we have to do it.
Yeah,
And it's like
passion, yeah,
you have like we if so even like when we talk about DEI, right, the terms and there's still now people talking about changing the language, right? And so, oh, let's not use diversity, equity, inclusion, let's use whatever words they want to use. And we had that, like, we were going back and forth, like, "Did we change the words? Did we do this?" And it always comes back to, no, like, we have to stick to our values, stick to what we know is true. And I think that's always, even though it's hard in this time, even though the business isn't coming as it was in 2020, after the murder of George Floyd, but we know that it's still needed. Just because you
yeah,
take away the letters out of your organization, you still have the same humans in the organization that need
mhm,
to know how to work together, understand how to work together, understand each other, their lived experiences. And so we
yeah,
just want to stay true to our values. And so I think it's just
mhm,
when we continue to go back to that place and understand why we are here and doing it, that helps.
yeah,
Help to
yeah,
get through.
for sure. And that moment, that summer of 2020 after the murder of George Floyd, like, you talked about businesses and their commitments, some of which were real and some of which were pretty performative, but there was also the sort of cultural openness, like the book clubs that were formed, the white people reading about history and racism and all of that, like the humility that seemed to be there by so many people, like that's not there anymore. I mean, what do you how do you react to that moment, and did it feel hopeful and promising, and then now where we are?
Think that, white people by and large, they don't live the experience, and so they don't really have to, care about it. They can
Mhm.
care about it on the surface. I mean, so I'm not saying I think most white people would say, "Oh, racism is horrible, it's bad."
Right. Right.
I believe that.
Yeah.
However, I don't know that most think that they need to really do anything about it or that it's their responsibility or that they have the attention span because it is such hard work.
Mhm.
And so when you start saying, let's read these historical narratives, it's painful,
Mhm.
right? And so if it's not impacting, the United States anyway is a very individualistic, society. And so if it's not impacting me, I can care about it, but I don't necessarily feel like I need to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Why do so many of us gravitate to this work? Over 300,000 Black women have lost their jobs, and many of them were either directly involved in this work or in allied fields, right?
Yeah.
So why do we do it? We do it because we live it and
Mhm.
to not only raise awareness, but work to create societies where the next generation doesn't have to deal with the day-to-day microaggressions and
Yeah.
slights and not being accepted, not feeling like you belong,
Mhm.
feeling
Mhm.
that you have to
Yeah.
defend yourself, defend your presence, defend your humanity.
Right. Mm.
And we've seen that so
Mm.
much in the in we've seen it happening for people who are in the limelight. For example, Ketanji Brown Jackson, her path to the Supreme Court, she was so criticized as being not qualified. And I think it was Washington Post did something. She was the most qualified of anybody on the bench. She had more credentials than any of them. And yet,
Yeah.
and still, she was criticized as being
Mm.
low intelligence and
Right.
you know, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the sort of the insidiousness of that co-opting too, of DEI and meritocracy and all of that, making it theme that anybody of color who's got their position did it because of something other than their qualifications or
Right.
their
Which
merit.
which is so wild too, right, Michael? Because when you see people in government in leadership positions that have no credential to be
Right,
where they are, but yeah, so
right.
it's mind-boggling, but
Yeah, and that people don't see, like, a few episodes back, I had FNS Henderson on, who was talking about you have to work twice as hard to get half as far, that people don't see that
See,
and
they see it
But
as
realize.
the
they see
opposite. They see it as
but
the
they see it
opposite.
as it's our problem that we have not gotten it's not this there's not there's no barriers in place, it's just because your
Right.
own choice, your own decision, like,
Yeah, yeah,
oh,
yeah. I went around with a videographer and asked people what are some of the things they experience at work that make them feel bad and other people don't even realize it. And one that is such a light bulb for people is this Black woman talking about how people always call her so professional. And she's like, as opposed to what? Like someone with my hair or who looks like me or who sounds like me wouldn't be professional? And that sometimes can be a light bulb for people. And I know you all talked about professional hair in the book as well. And as you put it, it seems like something so obvious and even laughable that we have to have laws about what kind of hair can be allowed in places of work. And so sometimes that's a light bulb for people, but it it doesn't always even work. You still get all the defensiveness is wild. Um
yeah. And
and
even with
it's
the hair thing too, I've been seeing clips. Michelle Obama has been going around recently sharing just her experience of being the first lady and how her hair, right? She was very conscious of like how her hair was and wearing braids because like when Black women have their hair in braids, it's easier to maybe keep more quote unquote looking tame or looking like professional to your point, right, Michael? So she was very conscious of that. And now that she's out of that spotlight, she feels more free. But she brought up that like that the women Black women in their hair, that's a big thing. It's a huge thing. And which it shouldn't be. Like to your point, it's laughable. It's kind of like why do we have to have the Crown Act to make sure that we're not discriminated against for our hair, for how we wear our hair in the work.
right,
So
right.
so yeah,
Yeah. Um and 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 that's like one little thing out of,
right,
thousands of things that trigger these biases for people, and that I mean, many of which are so ridiculous. It's so hard to believe that we're still having to talk about it. One thing that's super important in your book is thinking about children and what they experience and what they learn and how they learn it. Um, I wonder if you could talk about just why is that so important when thinking about this topic?
Obviously, you know, the formative years, right? So what
Yeah,
children learn in the formative years, carries with them. And,
yeah,
I know Mareisha and I both tell our stories. And when I told my story about it was when I was 5 years old that I was called the N word and I didn't really know what it meant because my parents didn't use that kind of language in the house, but it stuck with me, to this day. I remember that. I remember that moment. It's like so, so vividly. So I think that children are, we say children are impressionable, and they truly are. And when children are not taught that they are special and of value, have a positive framing for themselves,
yeah,
that leads then to all of the things that we see. If people are telling you you're not good enough, you're less than, that's what you begin to believe. In the book, we talk about Marisha's brother and my son. Until fourth grade, Joe was a problem. I mean, he kept being a problem. And now, he's a graduate of Harvard, Duke, and Princeton, and he's a good
mhm,
professor, just gone from Duke to now he's at going to be at Rutgers. He was a valedictorian of his high school class. He got a full scholarship to Harvard because of his academics. But before that, and there was a white male fourth grade teacher who said, I don't think there's anything wrong with Joe, except I think he's just brilliant. And so
Mhm.
once we reframed that, because even we were buying into, Joe's a problem, he's a problem. Once we stopped buying into that and saw him as brilliant, then he started to act like, you know,
Mm.
and so I
Yeah,
think that it's really important, and for children not to have the books and the images and the role models to know about, from Frederick Douglass to Malcolm X to everybody to Marcus Garvey to everybody in between, right? And don't let me leave out some of the women, Toni Morrison and Sojourner Truth, and to not know. I remember, and I write about this in the book. I remember I didn't have any idea who Sojourner Truth was, but my best friend Alnita in 7th grade got up and read an essay about Sojourner Truth. And we were all, even the teacher, because she was a great writer, Alnita was just, a great, we were all just stunned. And I thought, there's this black woman that right? And I mean, so that just changed my thinking from then on. That's when I became more of an activist and just and much more, around um, understanding Black power and Black people.
mm,
So if we don't allow our children to have this education and to see themselves as brilliant and beautiful and then what is the next generation going to be like?
right, right. And it's all that, and sometimes I even think about, like, what names are we using in books for math word problems, right? Like,
Mhm.
what pictures are on the wall, like,
Right,
all the subtle things
right.
that can decenter whiteness from our schools that people don't always think about, but which are absolutely vital for kids, and they can be so subtle.
Just in general, the messaging right now is just the only
Anti-Black.
people that matter is white people. Like, that is the message. Even this immigration situation, they're using the word immigration, and we know immigrants there's way more immigrants than just Latino, but that's when they're going to these cities, that's who they're targeting. So they're not going after immigrants, they're going after Latinos. They're going after
Yeah,
brown people. So it's like
yeah,
when we name
no,
that and start naming what it really is, and that's also a frustrating piece for me. It's like, stop just saying, "Oh, it's immigrants, immigrants." Like, yes, they are immigrants, but it's also like you're going after a very specific group of immigrants.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
No, white South Africans are fine.
Exactly,
Right,
exactly,
right.
Mhm, mhm.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of people getting terrorized are not immigrants. I mean, they were born here.
Right, and that's it.
Um,
Yes, exactly.
yeah,
Right, and
for
that's
sure.
what we were talking about earlier. It's the physical identification, being able to look at somebody and say, "Oh, you're not white."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and oof, oh gosh,
Mm, yeah.
that's a whole nother podcast. What like, I love the chapter too about, solutions and what could actually make a difference here in this country, because I think sometimes people just think like you can do it passively, like, "Oh, we just wait for the older generation to die off and then we'll be fine," which is so not the way it's gonna happen, as we can see right now. I mean,
Right.
the racism of the young white man
Yes.
is shocking. Um, so, like, wha how are you thinking about solutions? Like, do you have what gives I mean, you talked about some things that give you hope, but are there some things that give you hope on a big scale that any of that could happen?
I just think that, there has to come a point in time where there's this tipping point. There used to be, what was this analogy we used to use when the oil spill?
Well, spell, yeah.
That analogy that says you had a choice. You could either jump in the water or run into the fire. So you had to do something, right? So what are we going to do? Are we going to jump in the water and think we're going to be, or we're going to, but we have to do something. So you get to a point where you have to do something. And I guess I have to hold hope that we're going to um, jump in the water and it's going to be warm water and water where we can all, where we can all survive. and not only survive, but get to a place where for me, it's about the heart. Get to a place where our hearts are not hardened, where
Mhm.
we are a society of compassion and caring, and we recognize that diversity just is.
Mm.
It's the way the world was
Just
made,
right,
just
right.
is, right?
Yep.
And that our challenge is to figure out ways to make it work so that it
Mhm.
benefits us all. I mean,
Yeah.
that's yeah, that's the work we do, Michael, right? That's the
You're
work.
right.
How do
Yep.
we create systems and societies and workplaces and cultures that value that diversity just is? It's the way the
Mhm.
world was made. And how do
Yep.
we create, right? And so until we get to that point where in the hearts, it's the hearts and minds, I think, but it starts with the heart. Because if
Mhm.
my heart is there, then perhaps I'm willing to be educated.
Mhm.
But if my
Yeah.
heart's not there, and somebody's telling me we gotta learn more about Black people, my heart's not there, I'm like,
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and I think that's where I think that the religious leaders come into play. As I mentioned, I just wrote this blog post because I was walking the other day. I was just out for my morning walk, and I said, "Where's the clergy? Why aren't they
Mhm.
outraged? Why aren't they telling people, no, this is wrong? You're being mean and nasty and violent towards your fellow citizens. You're smashing cars and ripping children from their mother's arms. And,
Yeah,
and you don't even know who they are. And they've
and you
not
did
done
Mhm.
share
anything
about
wrong."
Pope Leo did come out yesterday. I don't know if you put that in your
I
post or
did.
was part of it. Yes,
I
yeah.
did. I did. So
So I
Pope Leo
think
has
that
come
is
out
starting like that probably 'cause, when the
when
Pope
the Pope,
speaks for
right?
many, like, that is
But
yeah,
it was
so
still,
hopefully
to me, it was still too mild,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know?
I think
Yeah.
even by calling it out like, I think just the fact of calling it out, like,
Right.
like,
It's a
that's part
start.
of it. It's like, for this it
Hmm.
hasn't even been a full year, we've been in this new administration. And for the long it like, even in the beginning, I was like, "Oh, this can't keep going." But it then just keeps going and going. But I think
And gets getting worse.
right, and so it's like, and we're not here. I'm like, "Where are the people? Where's the outrage? Where are the people calling out?" So I think now starting to hear that, even though it may not be as strong, it's like, okay, well, maybe to your point, there's the glimmer, there's the glimmer glint
Right.
of hope because
Yeah.
somebody said
Yes. Yes.
something that the whole world, I mean, for the Pope say it, the whole world heard that, not just us, right? Like
Right.
that, like
Exactly.
the whole
Yeah.
world hears that. So for me, yeah, so it's like those
But I'd like to see him come together with clergy and religious leaders from other faiths, right?
Mhm.
Right? So that,
For
I mean, I
sure.
know Catholicism is probably the largest of the Christian faiths.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. And what about business leaders? Like, what do you, if you could get 30 seconds to tell business leaders something about how they could, like, whatever's happening out there in the world, at least it's not going to happen here with us. Like, what would you tell them?
I don't know if I have the 30-second soundbite, but I did want to share that, we are like the CEO of Elf, a cosmetic company, recently came out and talked about how DEI, like it is important. It does help business. So I think seeing more of that because ultimately, like for me too, it's hard to understand why are they not speaking out, right? Why are they not saying, no, this has helped me, like this has helped our business. You see what happened to Target. So clearly going the opposite direction is not working. So I don't and again, we talked about the power, the money. So maybe there's things behind the scenes I don't understand about why people don't speak out. But seeing
Mhm.
that, like so back to these moments of hope. And I do think there are still those CEOs, even that the Elf CEO talked about. Yeah, I talked to other CEOs who get it and who still support this and think so. And then we've seen the shareholder votes, right, with like the anti-DEI proposals, and they're voting against it. So there is power in numbers, but that stuff also doesn't get shared enough, right? It's like, so the things we hear more frequently is the negative part of what all that's going on. And that's what the news wants to put out and put out. And so I wish that we could hear more so that we know, like, okay, so it's not all like, it's not all doom and gloom from that perspective. Not everybody's pulling back from DEI, even though it feels like everybody is, but you have those moments. So my note to them would be like, talk to the ELF CEO and can you
Yeah.
Mhm.
all get together to like as a the group of CEOs and the group of university leaders and group of get together and form a group or coalition against this to push back because
Right, and say this and just say this, this needs to stop. This needs to stop.
Um, so this has been amazing. Wrapping up, I always like to give people things they could go out and do today or tomorrow if they wanted to. One of those things is you got to read Black Fatigue. Like if you go into that book with an open mind, right? If you go in with an open mind, there's no way you come out of it not transformed. So that's one thing I would tell people to do. What would you both add that people could do?
I would say that people, could really get educated, and that, reading Black Fatigue is just one way and a start to get educated. So what is the opposite of woke? It's to be
Mhm.
asleep, right? So I would suggest people wake up, be woke, be
Yeah.
woke, be woke to what is happening, how people are suffering, and recognize that, as Dr. Martin Luther King said, what affects one of us directly affects all of us indirectly. I'm
Yeah.
paraphrasing, but it was something similar.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah, I agree. I
Marisha,
mean,
what would
we're
you add?
all like we're all this idea of interconnectedness, we're all connected. So black fatigue is not just a black people issue. It's everybody's issue. And so I would want people to understand that, to question what they're, everything we hear, we should question, do our own research. So back to that education, educate yourself. Don't just take somebody's word for it. Don't even take our word for it. Educate, educate yourself on all the things from black fatigue to everything we discussed in this podcast about what's going on in the world. And do I think sometimes people think, oh, I have to do this huge thing to make the change. No, like we're individual people. We can't do such huge things necessarily so do what you can within your sphere of influence and every day commit to something that's going to make the world better, the country better, the lives of historically marginalized people better.
Yeah.
And I did want to add, we did not tell you this when you asked us about what's new. So this won't be
Mhm.
in the book, but we are creating a companion workbook
Mm.
called Healing Black Fatigue Practices for Renewal, Resistance, and Joy. So Black fatigue is heavy. The book is heavy, right? It's a lot of and there are moments where we talk about things you could do. We talk about self-care. We talk about different things, but it still is like, if you read it, there was somebody recently who said they have the first edition and they have not been able to read it because it's just like, it's like, they don't, that will add more fatigue. So this is kind of that, what do you do next? How do you combat Black fatigue? So I wanted to add that will also
Love
be
it.
coming out with the book as well.
Wonderful. Thank you for bringing that up. That's great. All right, Mary Frances, Marisha, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I know our listeners appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you for
us.
having us. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
Be
Take
well.
care.
Thank
All
you.
right. You too.